What's going on, guys? I am here in the middle of nowhere in Madison County, Kentucky, at the site of Fort Boonesboro. This town was founded by none other than Daniel Boone himself in 1775. It is the second oldest settlement in Kentucky. And there was a siege that occurred in 1778 by the Shawnee Indian chief Blackfish against Daniel Boone in Boonesboro. Now, we went to the fort on the other side, but it's only open from April to October. And it's February right now, so it's not open. So we're gonna see if we can get in from the backside. And I'm gonna show you what this town has to offer. We'll get more into the history of it once we get there. But I'm just gonna kind of vlog the trail right here. This is a state park. They made it into a campground, so we're gonna walk this trail and see if we can get to Fort Boonesboro, at least to the outside of it. And then maybe later on this year, if we can't get in, we'll do a video where we're actually inside. How we doing, guys? We walked the whole trail, acted like we were Kentucky pioneers coming up through here. This is the Fort Boonesboro. It was built in 1775 by Daniel Boone and his men. So basically, we're gonna read some of these monuments. We made it in here. The gate over there to get in is closed, but we came in through a trail, which actually leads us in here. So we're gonna check out the door. Maybe they left it unlocked. I don't know. Maybe they forgot to lock it. Hopefully, and we can get inside. But here's a cool monument. This monument was erected in 1981 by the members of the Boonesborough Historic Society. This is a list of every person in alphabetical order who lived in Boonesboro. Here's Daniel Boone here, Colonel Daniel Boone. There he is, man. There's his son and stuff in alphabetical order. Every single, I guess maybe Ann was his mother or something like that. Captain William Buchanan. So there's a few military leaders in here. So these are like the first ever Kentucky pioneers right here. Here's some more of this stuff. Very good. The start of the pioneer times in the United States. Daniel Boone is known as really the first one of the Western frontier, which Kentucky was part of the frontier at the time, of course. But in 1763, in order to keep the Native Americans safe from the English settlers in the Americas, this was owned by Britain at the time in 1763, King George III of Britain signs the Proclamation Act, which makes it so that Britain's going to draw a line on the Appalachian Mountains and says that no white settlers are allowed to cross that line unless they're only for trading, but no settling is allowed because George III and the people of Britain wanted to keep the Native Americans safe. That way they would not be wiped out like they were on the East Coast. But you had a few people that resisted, of course, and during the American Revolution in the 1760s and 1770s, Daniel Boone, who was born in 1734 in Pennsylvania, to a very rich landowner named Squire Boone Sr. And Daniel Boone came over to Kentucky, crossed the Appalachian Mountains, and settled in this very area known as Boonesboro, which was his first successful settlement. Looks like we're not the only people trying to get in here because there's another guy trying to break in and realize it's closed. But this area, you got to realize too, was occupied by a ton of Native Americans at this time, and it was very crucial for them to have a fort here, because if they didn't have a fort, the Native Americans could come in and wipe them out. And obviously the Native Americans were on Britain's side during the Revolutionary War. This fort was built the same year as the first shots rolled out in Lexington and Concord, which kicked off the war in the first place. And Britain had handed Shawnee chief Blackfish. Blackfish was the Shawnee chief. The capital of the Shawnee was seated in Chillicothe, Ohio, which is modern day Chillicothe. That was where the Shawnee were settled at the time. Blackfish was the chief. He was the adopted father and uncle of Chief Tecumseh, who later on during the War of 1812 was really the last Shawnee chief. But Blackfish was gifted guns by Britain during his army, and they came down here in 1778 in what is known as the Siege of Boonesboro. And we'll get more into that here. This sign talks about the siege right here. So here we go. Fort Boonesboro. Here's another look, a little bit more of history behind it. The Transylvania Company, organized by Richard Henderson in North Carolina, purchased the land south of the Kentucky River, which there's a river on the other side here, known as the Kentucky River, that was purchased from the Cherokee Indians for resale to settlers. Daniel Boone was hired to lead the Transylvania Company expedition into Kentucky, claim it, and build a fort. The fort was built under his direction, according to Henderson's plan, during the spring and summer of 1775. Now, keep in mind, this was all illegal, okay? This was not allowed. Under the proclamation law passed in 1763, 12 years prior, by the British government, this was illegal to settle land west of the Appalachian Mountains. But they did it anyway, which was part of the reason we revolted. The main reason you'll hear why the settlers revolted against Britain was because of taxation, but another big reason was the fact that they were basically landlocked, because Britain wanted to try to keep the Native Americans safe, but it didn't go down very well. The fort withstood assaults by formidable bodies of Indians in April 16th and July 6th of 1777 and August 8th of 1778. There were many attempts in 1777 and 1778 to take down the fort, but they all failed. Led by Blackfish, of course, the Shawnee chief. That was the tribe that withstood them and lived in this area. The fort was reconstructed on this site and overlooks the original site of the Kentucky rivers. In 1778, the Kentucky frontier was saved by two major military victories. The settlers withstood the Great Siege of Boonesboro, and George Rogers Clark defeated the British and Indians at Kaskaskia and Vincennes. Fort Vincennes, that's in Indiana, and this, I believe, is somewhere around there too. This fort became the first town chartered by Kentucky in October of 1779 by the Virginia Assembly. Boonesboro is the capital of the colony of Transylvania, which I guess at the time this was known as Transylvania. I did not know that, actually. This was settled in April of 1775 by Daniel Boone, of course, named in honor of him, Fort Boonesboro, as the first fortified settlement in Kentucky, near the fort under the Divine Elm Tree in May of 1775. Colonel Richard Henderson held the first legislative assembly of frontier settlers in Harrodsburg, St. Asaph, Boonesboro, at Boiling Springs Settlement. In 1775, we have a Boonesboro. The most famous siege was, Daniel Boone had his army up here on the top. They had their guns and stuff. The Native Americans in September of 1778, September 8th or September 7th, they came up here, the Shawnee, led by Blackfish, who was the Shawnee chief at the time. They came up through here and was going to try to take down the fort as an invasion, because they wanted to get all of these American settlers off of their land, of course. Let's just see if they forgot to lock it. All right, they remembered to lock it. Okay, good employees. The whole fort was obviously walled in, and all around the surrounding areas, the Shawnee were trying to break into the place. Kentucky. Now, this is such a cool place to do it. As you can see right here, this fort is completely original, 1775 wood here. But with an army led by Chief Blackfish himself, in September of 1778, all right, he led his Native American forces up here to come take down the fort of Boonesboro and kill or capture every single person living in here. Now, there are only a few hundred people that lived in Boonesboro. The town was completely fortified, keeping anybody from getting in, of course. Now, this was an 11-day siege. Throughout an entire 24 hours on all 11 days, You had the people of Boonesboro up there on ladders up at the top using it as defense to shoot down all the Native Americans, but they kept coming. Blackfish kept sending in reinforcements for 11 days straight. And eventually what happened was, I wonder if this is why the bark looks burnt like that. Basically, on the 11th day of the battle of the siege on September 18th, Blackfish ordered his troops, or his Native American forces, to light up their arrows and start shooting fire arrows at the fort like it was like Zelda style, basically, shooting fire arrows at the fort to try to burn it down. Keep in mind, the people of Boonesboro had not gotten out in 11 days. The people in there were starving to death, basically. They had no source of food. They ran out of all their food supply because they couldn't come out and hunt anything else. Because if they were to leave, the Native Americans would kill them. They were basically all out here occupying for 11 days straight. And at that time, Blackfish was getting really sick of this, so he decides to burn down the fort. So he lights up his arrows, Zelda style, with flames, and starts shooting fire arrows at the Boonesboro. The whole town of Boonesboro is on fire, basically. So come look in here. The whole town is erupted in flames. Now, once this happened, the whole town was in flames. Daniel Boone thought it was over. I mean, there were a few people that got shot down from the top occasionally, but they were vastly outnumbered. If they tried to come out and take them out, it would not have worked. But luckily, it started to, a thunderstorm came and put out all the fire. It was like God's will coming in and saved Boonesboro. And Boonesboro was saved after that siege. Very remarkable. I wonder if the reason this wood is black like this is if that has anything to do with the fort being on fire. I don't really know. That would be crazy if that was actually the case, but we can't go in there. But these are very historic. All of these buildings are original in the 1770s. Take it down. So Boonesboro was not the only battle that took place in the Western frontier during the Revolutionary War. When we talk about the American Revolution, people mainly only talk about what happened in the East against Britain. But there were a lot of revolutionary battles that happened in the West. Another example would be in Fort Detroit up in Detroit, Michigan. There was also a battle there in Indiana, as well as Kentucky, Ohio, even in the Northwest Territory. When these were just territories, there were also Native American sides of the Revolution, but no one talks about it. The siege of Boonesboro, although happened 100 or 250 years ago, is still remarkable to history, because if Daniel Boone would have been killed and Boonesboro taken out, I mean, the Western frontier, and who knows, but it was a very important event in the history of this place, that siege was. If this video gets 15 likes, all right, guys, you failed me last time. If this video can get 15 likes, we'll come back here this summer or something. When this place is open, at some point between April and October, we'll come back here and film inside of there so we can get a more detailed tour. And there's a lot around here that still needs to be seen that I'm not going to show right in today's video, because you guys got to show me that you want to see it. But there is one more fort in this area that's not as old, but it is also called Fort Boonesboro, and it was a Civil War fort. There was also a Civil War battle that took place here in Kentucky in the 1860s, about 100 years after this. But when this is open, I'll do a video here doing a tour of it. But 15 likes first, and let me know what you think. This was like a little, check out Fort Boonesboro, the new Fort Boonesboro, the 19th century Fort Boone, which could also be closed, but we're gonna hope it's not. If it's closed, we'll show you. But let's go fast and forward about 90 years or so to the American Civil War. This is another Fort Boonesboro, Civil War fort at Boonesboro, 1863 to 65. Let's see if it's closed. Hopefully it's not. There's the Kentucky River that I was talking about. Boonesboro, the 1700 settlement, is on the other side. Now this is the fort that was made during the Civil War. Now obviously Kentucky was part of the Union. This was a Union fort, of course. Although Kentucky had slaves, it was not a Confederate state, because Kentucky never seceded. There were 3 Confederate raids that took place between 1863 and 1865. In the spring and summer of 1863, Confederate raids led by Colonel Roy Kluge, General John Pegerman, Colonel John Scott, crossed and recrossed the Kentucky River. Their mission was to twofold: and confuse the Union command and to obtain needed supplies for the Confederate Army here at the fort. So he was trying to get some supplies. The Union troops in central Kentucky were ordered to do everything possible to stop Confederate raiders, and the raiders kept the soldiers' attention engaged elsewhere, which showed the efforts to construct fortifications to defend the bridges, forts, and ferries in the Kentucky River. So that was how the fort first came to be, because of all the Confederate raiders coming into central Kentucky and taking everybody's supplies. So they decided to build a fort so they could defend themselves from it. Kluge's raid in February of 1863. So here's some of the stories of the 3 raids that took place. Here's the defending the Kentucky River. So that was basically how this came to be. This is a map of the general area here. So Kluge's raids in the yellow here. This is where he came up out of Tennessee. McMinnville came all the way up here. Somerset's there. Mount Vernon. Winchester, Kentucky. There's Mount Sterling right here. This is where he was defeated by the 45th Ohio, led by Colonel Benjamin Runkle of the Union. Colonel, leader of the 45th Ohio Infantry. Pegram's raid in March of 1863, the next month, is in the orange here. He came over to Danville, and he was defeated at Knoxville, North Carolina. And then Scott's raids in the brown here. Williamsburg, London, Winchester came all the way up here. So they all crossed around the fort, except for Pegram never really came through here. But it was crossed, especially by Kluge. He was the guy who was the first to really invade the fort. The fort up tall, like I said, might be like up there. Oh, God. It's quite the hike. We had to hike to get to the other fort, too, because the main entrance was in. So here's some of the history of the ancient Kentucky. Very cool stuff. The Kentucky River Formation, obviously. Talking about 400 million years ago under the Bluegrass region. This is the Bluegrass region of Kentucky, right here. Kentucky's known as the Bluegrass State, if you didn't know that. There's some plants that we're going to find out here, but everything's dead. I mean, plants we're going to find out. What a great sign. All right, we're going on. These signs are the checkpoints to keep you occupied.
A great incentive.
Here's a list of all the roads that existed in Clark County, Kentucky in 1861 at the start of the Civil War. All right, we've arrived at the 3 more signs, but we're now to a more open area. The fort should be over there. As you can see, we got some cannons about ready to shoot us down. If we were Confederate soldiers, we would be screwed right now, because when they go up here, they are not prepared for that to be launched on them, I guess. We're not going to read those signs. It's just the defense of some of the strategies they used to take them out. The early rock fences were built in the late 1700s. They defined barnyards, paddocks, gardens, house yards, graveyards, whatever. The marked property lines, although they required skilled labor to build, many people believe that slaves, most were actually in Kentucky. Most people believe those were built by slaves, but I just denied myself. In fact, most were built by Irishmen who brought fence building techniques when they came to the New World. Irish immigrants swelled between 1845 and 1848 due to the years of the Irish potato famine, which was going on in the 1840s in Ireland. A lot of them came to the New World, and they had a lot of good building techniques. And a lot of Irishmen came to Kentucky to build some fences. So a lot of them were actually built by Irishmen in the 1840s. Around 1850. There were 17 men in Clark County in 1850. This is Clark County, by the way. If I remember, made that clear. this that were built by there, the Irishmen of descent. Men of Irish descent. Crazy view though. This is beautiful up here, but man, is it exhausting. We came all the way for one cannon. Where's the fort? Let's use the hose, a restroom. I do need to go pee. I guess this is a good spot to end the video. Boonesboro, Kentucky, up at the fort. Over there's the cannon. We're gonna go to the bathroom over here. We're gonna see how these bathrooms are nice. I gotta use the bathroom right now. Go take a leak. We're gonna see what they got here. The restroom. Now, I'm kind of scared to walk in here. But we're gonna see. Bathroom door. Oh my God. This is gross. Okay. Make sure there's no big spiders anywhere. Oh God. I'm scared to go in here, to be honest with you. Mario Plush Bros bathroom tours, ladies and gentlemen. Alright, don't be scared. Don't be scared. There's Mountain Dew Code Red in there. I don't know who's bringing up Code Red up in this place. Oh God, I do not want that door to close behind me. Oh God, okay. Okay. I'm good. I am in the bathroom with the door closed, guys. Alright, I'm gonna pee and see what happens. Guys, I made it out alive. Look at that. Went to the old 1700s fort, and with that, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that short little Boonesboro, Kentucky video, and I want to thank you guys for watching. Be sure to comment, like, and subscribe, and I'm going to take in this view up here. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Whack.